Welcome to the Accomplish Impact podcast, where we explore what it truly means to accomplish in life with a focus on purpose-driven leadership. We'll be releasing new episodes every other Tuesday at 6 a.m, so be sure to subscribe and join us as we uncover the aspiring journeys of leaders who are making an impact in their space. In each episode, we sit down with visionary business leaders who are not only achieving remarkable success, but doing so with a deep sense of meaning and purpose. I'm your host Benjamin, and in today's episode, we're joined by Cynthia Lim, owner of Metanoia Consulting, which does retail consulting and business and people alignment. Welcome to the show, Cynthia.
Thank you, Ben. Good to be here.
Yeah, so thank you so much for being on the show, Cynthia. Maybe for those of the people who don't know you so well, maybe you can just briefly introduce yourself.
Well, I am someone who's been involved with retail development for a while now. And prior to that, I've got a legal background. So I practiced for a very short time. And I think that set the stage for me as a basis into, retail development as well. And of course, after that, I decided that, hey, facilitation is something that I would like to get myself involved in, because I realized that, impacting company bottom lines is really great, but impacting people is actually a little bit more to what I kind of feel for. Yeah.
I see. Maybe you can share a little bit what you do in Metanoia Consulting also.
So there are two parts to Metanoia Consulting to the business. First is, of course, the retail development bit, which is almost like my core business. And then secondarily, we have, I do facilitations as well. So for retail development, I actually service clients who run, retail malls, and also people who are actually building retail projects as well. So I'm working on, I've got 2 active clients at the moment, which is a shopping center in KL, and the other one is actually a rest stop area on the north-south highway as well. So the rest stop area, we're looking at it from ground zero. So it's under construction at the moment, and we're looking at opening probably end of this year or early next year. Yeah. So I help to bring in the right tenants, position the building, as well as strategize what do we do in terms of, how do we run the development and things like that as well. Yeah.
And then you said there's a second part of Metanoia, which is the training and facilitation.
The facilitation itself. So facilitation, I kind of use Lego bricks in order to do a bit of a people alignment as well. So whilst I can use the same bricks to help businesses strategize their work and things like that, but I also try and align people, because at the core or the heart of things, in a company or in a business, it's really the people itself. Yeah.
And I think what we really want to dive into today is we want to find out more about facilitation, right? And how you facilitate people. But I mean, maybe for those who are not too familiar with what facilitation really is, what is facilitation?
So I realized that, from very young, it is really part of me to ask a lot of questions. And my mom used to tell me that as a child, I kept asking why with, almost everything, right? And to a certain point, it kind of like frustrates her, because she's got to stop everything and just like try and answer, my questions and things like that. And then when I found out about facilitation, I realized that there's a power in asking the right questions and how to ask the questions as well. So facilitation is not about giving answers or solutions to people, but really just helping people to dive deeper into what they're thinking, how they feel, or what really is the root cause of issues that they're facing. Yeah. So in a nutshell, I think, facilitation is a bit like just helping people to process through their thoughts, digging deeper. Yeah.
And why do you think it's important for people to maybe not master, but just know and understand what facilitation is, even if they're not a business leader or even a leader in their workplace?
Well, I think on day-to-day life, I'm sure each one of us have actually seen or heard have friends or family or somebody who come up to you and say, I've got this issue, I've got this problem, I don't know what to do and things like that. But a lot of times they're not really asking for solution from you. All they want is actually just a listening ear and someone for them to just be a sounding board in a way. Like they just want to hear themselves, but they've got to say it to somebody and not just, against the blank wall, right? And it is part and parcel of our lives, actually, and to help people to just think through things, it's like, oh, why is that important to you? Like, why are you feeling this way? Kind of thing, without them feeling that they're being judged or being told what to do, because nowadays people really don't like it, right? I mean, it's best for them to actually discover for themselves what they need to do, because then it sticks in your head, right? Because you go like, yeah, I own that decision as to what I'm going to do with my issues or my problems. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, facilitation is about listening and also being able to hold people together. But do you think is there a deeper meaning when it comes to, or a deeper purpose of facilitation beyond just holding meetings? Because for a lot of people, when people say I'm a facilitator in perhaps maybe in less high risk, like maybe not corporate environment, they say I've facilitated maybe groups of people. Some people think it's just running a meeting. Is there a deeper purpose or deeper understanding of facilitation than that?
Well, I think it's not just running a meeting in a way, but okay, if let's say we take the example of running a meeting. Now, generally you have a boardroom of let's say, hypothetically 10 people, right?
Yep.
Out of that 10 people, you probably have 2 persons who's really involved in the meeting. One is the person who needs a solution. Number 2 is the person who's taking minutes, right? Because you've got to capture everything, right? The rest are just sitting back and kind of like, you're not sure if they're really there. Physically they are, but mentally they're probably like, traveling to the Bahamas basically, or thinking about the emails and all that they have to reply to, or the work that's piling up on the desk in a way. So, but when we actually get a good facilitator to bring in the conversations, a brainstorm session in a meeting would be much more effective rather than just 2 persons or 3 persons talking. We'll have 10 people actually participating in the conversation as well.
Yeah, I think that's the difficulty when it comes to a lot of meetings nowadays, right? People are just not physically there, especially with online meetings. It's so easy to just turn off, do your own thing and kind of like not be engaged, right? Yeah. And I think when it comes to being a good facilitator, what do you think are some key attributes or key values that good facilitators have?
I think number 1 is to be a good listener, Ben. And most of us, to be honest, we love to hear ourselves talk. When someone else is talking, you're very quick to jump in, whether it's to give a solution or to say something and all that, right? I mean, I myself, I'm guilty of that as well. But I realized that as a facilitator, I needed to listen more and talk less and really understand the heart of what people are actually saying. Sometimes people can say certain things, but in actual fact, they are feeling something completely different, or there are other things happening in their heart or in their minds that they can't articulate or they don't know how to pinpoint. So it is something which, a good facilitator will be able to pick up as well. So being a good listener is one of those things. Number 2 is that you don't carry a spirit of being judgmental, actually. Because you can't be. And I think, especially for people who have a bit more experience in life, slightly older than like yourself and all that, we kind of jump in to kind of say that, oh, I've been there before, I've done that before and that was what I did kind of thing and all that, right? Holding that back, I think that's very important because that's not giving space to the person who's talking to actually explore fully or to throw out what they actually are feeling or what they really want to say. Yeah. So being a good listener first, actually.
I think that's so great, Cynthia. Really just being able to listen to people and hold that space for them without jumping straight to conclusions. But I think, it's easier said than done. What do you think are some perhaps practical steps that people can take in order to be a better listener or be able to, hold themselves back when it's just human nature for us to want to give people solutions because we want to get things done and get things done quickly?
I think giving yourself a pause. That's important. So I have learned, one of the tools that I've learned in facilitation is that you hold yourself back, so count to 10, right? 10 seconds. and then speak. So in that 10 seconds, you process your mind. And number 2 is you process your heart, your emotions itself. Because instead of just like wanting to jump in, you tell yourself, okay, no, listen, what should I say? And I do it thoughtfully as well. Pick the right words to speak at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. Because I think oftentimes it's very easy to get, in a sense, manipulated by your own emotions. That, maybe somebody said something that hurts your case or hurts whatever you were trying to present on your proposal, and it can really feel like it's a personal attack. And I think be able to hold that space and of that 10 seconds and just wait before you speak is so important. But I mean, you've facilitated a lot of people across a lot of groups, or maybe even across a lot of events. What do you think was the most difficult facilitation that you've ever had?
I remember one that I think probably has been etched to me, but I've learned a lot out of it as well. I've also, in that session, there were very, very strong personalities within the team. I was supposed to align a particular team, kind of like a team building thing with all the head of departments, right? But there were certain head of departments that, carry a lot of grudges against one another and things like that. And they were just not working very well. And I realized that people who come with the mindset that I'm always right, and that I don't, it's your fault. Everything that's gone wrong is because you guys have not done it, but I have done my part, that kind of thing and all that, right? And the lack of self-awareness to actually see that, hey, in fact, I have my blind spots too, and that I'm not always right, that kind of thing, right? And I think people who are not humble enough in a way, that makes it very difficult to facilitate. So for my case, I had people like that. So no matter what you said, no matter what other people talked about and all that, right? These people just say, well, this is how I am. This is who I am. And you just have to stomach me as I am, kind of thing. And that makes it very difficult for a facilitator to proceed, because there's just lack of self-awareness and there's no respect for somebody else as well.
For these type of people who, like you say, hold grudges, or just don't, because they've got so much pride and ego, don't want to give in, do you think perhaps there's something deeper that, as a facilitator, you have to address? Because is it just holding a grudge, or is it just that simple?
Probably not just that simple, Ben. I mean, outwardly, it looks like, okay, someone's just always not seeing eye to eye with a particular person. But there could be a lot of root causes to it. I mean, there could be preconceived notions like, bitter roots, which could stem out of fear or shame, or shame of being not as good as the other person that you don't like or dislike, or even fear that the person that you dislike would end up, being a more of a star performer, and compared to, or be more favored by the bosses and things like that, or that it could be something that stems from your own personal issue itself, meaning that from young, this person has always been compared with other people, or, lack of security, lack of love, maybe, lack of attention. And therefore, this is their way of manifesting, like, to get attention for themselves, or that, there's jealousy or envy and all that, because the other person seems to be having a better life, with everything seems to be rosy and good and all that. But whereas, for this particular person, for you, you go like, but, I don't have what that person has, that kind of thing. And I'm envious, kind of thing.
Yeah, you were saying that people were envious, there's perhaps all these deeper levels of conflict between individuals.
Yes. So it's not just what you see, on the surface itself. That's most of the time it actually manifests from a different place. There's a root cause to it.
And how do you as a facilitator get to that? Because like you said, on a surface level, it just seems like people just don't see eye to eye. How do you go so deep that you can, get really the root of the problem? I'm sure it's not just a simple conversation with that person, right? There has to be some sort of, I don't know, what technique do you have as a facilitator to really read into these individuals and be able to understand the root of the problem?
So a lot of times when this happens, asking the right questions, and just the way you actually ask the questions also makes a difference as well, to create that safe space for the person to dive deeper into why they are feeling a certain way, and why is it important for them to react that way, or what is the need for them to feel, or how do they feel when they have that outburst, or when they say those nasty words and things like that. Does that make them feel better, or what really is going on within themselves? Yeah. So it's also to help them slow down and think through exactly what it is that is affecting them and how they're feeling at the moment. Because when we have altercations with one another, we quarrel with one another, words get released at the heat of the moment, right? And then after that, we kind of like hold back and go, when you have 2 seconds to think, you go like, I shouldn't have said that, right? So instead of that sequence of releasing the words first and then reflecting on it, reflect first and then think about what you want to say. Yeah. So like I said earlier, that 10 seconds pause is really a good way of just, getting people to really think about what they want to say as well. So how do we find out what really is the root cause? It's really by asking the right questions. Yeah.
I think like you said, things can get very heated. And the reality is a lot of people just won't take that 10 seconds. So what happens in a facilitation if, words have been said, maybe fists not thrown, but like it's as if people are attacking one another? How do you handle that conflict within groups?
So what I normally do before the start of the workshop or at the start of the workshop is to set down some ground rules. Respect is one of those things. And these ground rules don't necessarily come from me. So meaning that I get the group to say, okay, as a group, today you are going to set your ground rules for what is going to happen today. How are you going to behave yourself? Right?
Yeah.
And then you get the room to kind of like give you feedback. Okay. So, and a lot of times, respect, to listen, talk purposefully and things like that. Those generally will come up.
Yeah.
Or to maintain peace or to be happy, kind of thing. And when something like that erupts, let's say, right, during the workshop itself or the facilitation process, then I will guide people back to that whole list of whatever that they had said earlier. Okay, guys, look, this is what we have agreed to do for the day. Do you think we're actually meeting all these things?
Yeah.
And then they will kind of look at it and go, oh, yeah. Okay, then that's when most of the time they'll go like, okay, I'm sorry. Or they will just keep quiet and kind of get back to the routine of the flow of the workshop itself. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. I think I like it that you let people make the decision for themselves what are the grounds they set. Because I feel that when people do that, when you give them autonomy to make that decision, they have more ownership of those rules, because it's not like, oh, this facilitator is telling me to do all these things. It's what I feel is important for this group to progress. And because of that, I feel that people will respect these rules more, people will adhere to it more. Is that the case that you find?
That's definitely the case. Yeah. Like I said in the beginning, right? I mean, people don't really like to be told what to do.
Yeah.
They would like to have come up with the brilliant ideas themselves, right? So giving them that space to do that and the opportunity to do that, I think generally it works much better than setting out a whole list for them to follow through. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to discussions, discussions can keep on going forever and ever, sometimes with no real end goal. How do you ensure that in your facilitation, it's not just people discussing and just keep saying things and defending their own case, but there's actual results at the end of this?
So that's a really good question. Like I mentioned before, one of the tools that I use is actually LEGO Serious Play. So it's a methodology which allows people to only speak of what they have actually built. So in LEGO Serious Play, the facilitator poses a question, the participants actually build the answers with Lego bricks. And then they start sharing about what they have built, and nobody else is supposed to talk about the model that they have not built. Okay, so you can't actually, when somebody's sharing, their answers of the model, no one can actually jump in and say, hey, look, but that looks like this. But, the fact is you do not own that answer.
Yeah.
The person who built it owns that answer. And then we talk about reflection questions. We can ask questions mindfully and thoughtfully about the model that someone else has made. So how we actually control that situation is that because you cannot talk about or give comments about somebody else's answer, it kind of stops, or it doesn't open the door of opportunity for people to start commenting about something that you have said, for instance. So Ben, if you have said, so this is what I've built, my building is saying that, it is, the wind is blowing everywhere because I'm not sure about what's happening in my work and things like that, right? Someone else in the same room or in the same facilitation in the workshop can't say, hey, Ben, what do you mean by you don't know what you're going to do? You are hired for this, right?
Correct.
So that's like, no. Okay. So it contains everyone's safe space. So it allows you, Ben, to talk about what you actually feel about the workplace. And no one else can actually negate that because that's your answer. Yeah. So respect comes in as well, obviously.
And I think, in discussions, group discussions, there's always individuals who are perhaps more quiet or a bit more silent. How do you enable, whether it's enable, or how do you give these individuals an opportunity to speak up and really be a part of the conversation and part of the facilitation? Because at the end of the day, as a facilitator, all the voices of people in your group matters, right? And how do we help these people, whether speak up or empower them to be able to take more action?
Yeah, so that's another beauty of the LSP method, the LEGO Serious Play. Everybody must build an answer and everybody must share an answer.
Yeah.
So everyone is given specific time to actually share. So like it or not, whether you're quiet, whether you're chatty, you are given a specific an amount of time where you can actually talk about what you've actually built. And because you've actually put it into a building block, it becomes almost like you depersonalize it. So instead of bringing emotions into the whole thing, and start to trigger some other people whatsoever and all that. And you don't need to be defensive either because, you're just stating a fact. This is what I built and this is what it means, right? And that's it. So even the quietest in the group will find that they have to say something.
Yeah.
And I have seen in my facilitation where the quietest people are the ones with the deepest, thoughts and answers and all that, right? The most meaningful things come out of them. And the rest of the group are so surprised because they go like, wow, that person never speaks, and so, he's got a voice, Yeah. So, it really gives people a comfort level because the tools itself creates a safe space and the rules that go around it, help to give it that parameter of, that safe space actually. Yeah.
I think the reality is that when people are surprised by people who are quiet, is that it goes back again to your principle of facilitation, which is to listen, right? All of us who are maybe a bit more outspoken or a bit more vocal perhaps don't think so much and don't listen to people. That's probably why we always find that quiet people really have a lot of insight to share with other people, right? And I think it goes back against your principle, right, of listening to people.
Yep.
But I just want to go back to what you talked about. You talk about this LEGO Serious Play. Maybe I don't think a lot of people are familiar with it, right? Maybe you can just briefly share how does it work and how do you what it does.
So LSP is this wonderful tool which it was actually used by also Lego itself. At one point they were really going down the dumps because there were many other toys. Toy companies were coming up with gadgets and stuff like that, right? And Lego started to lose its shine after a while because obviously it's not singing and dancing to you, right? Because you need to use your hands and all that. And so the company actually used the methodology to turn themselves around and bring them back up on the charts with the top ranking toys and all that. So until today, that's why you still see it, right? So I grew up with some of these things and all that as well. And so the methodology itself is actually developed to ensure that people are able to actually speak their minds. And because when we build with our hands, it kind of cuts through the whole mental thinking and things like that, right? So the philosophy of it is actually to allow a short period of time to build an answer to a question that is posed by the facilitator. And because it's a short time, you don't have the luxury of sitting there and having a meeting with yourself and go like, okay, what brick should I pick? What should I put together? How should I build this, right? You just put them together, right? Just because your hands will do the thinking.
Yeah.
In actual fact, whatever that we think we know, we're pretty much like an iceberg, right?
Yeah.
It's basically the 10% of the iceberg itself. 90% of that iceberg is what's inside us that we don't even know. And we actually absorb and we learn subconsciously. So whilst you may be walking through a supermarket, or you may be doing something or whatever in an environment that is different to your, home or things like that, right? Or different to what you're used to, you don't realize that in actual fact, your body learns about the environment. Your body absorbs what people are actually doing, and you don't consciously learn, but you have actually got all of those things in yourself. And when you work with your hands without going through the brains, it actually thinks for itself as well. And your body reacts. You go like, oh yeah, I never knew that was that, that kind of thing. So I've had participants who built models, and then as a facilitator, and I asked certain questions because the way it's being built or whatever and all that. There was one particular one which I remember very well. There was a hole left in the building, right? The person was meant to build a tower and things like that. The question was to build a tower. And then this person built something where it's got a hole in between. And just as I was asking, oh, does that meaning behind the hole that is at the little opening within the tower? The person stopped for a short while and kind of thought about it 2 seconds, and then the person said, actually, it feels like a hole in my heart, because whilst I am building my career, I'm building that tower, but my heart is really quite empty. And that drew out a lot of vulnerability for the rest of the group as well. And people realized that, hey, my colleagues are not just here to perform a job, but they bring their whole self to the office. Sometimes the situations that they face outside of the office affect their work performance. And then people go like, oh, okay, no wonder this person says a certain thing, or this person is very closed up because the person is either shameful or fearful, or, just there's a lack in that person. And that's why it actually shows outwardly by the person. It's a defense mechanism, right? We all have self-preservation, right? So I don't want people to know that I am lonely. I don't want people to know that I'm facing such big issues at home, kind of thing. And I put up a strong facade. And I become difficult with other people.
So you're able to really go deep by actually seeing what are people's knee-jerk reactions, in a sense, when they build things, and then how it manifests in those buildings. I think that's so beautiful. Is there anything else about, and any stories about this LEGO Serious Play that you want to go a bit deeper into?
The beauty of it is really the vulnerability of the group itself. And what I realized is that once we get one person to be open, to be vulnerable, the rest, it will just be a watershed moment, actually. And I have seen, almost every group that I have facilitated, I see them walking away with a new sense of respect for one another. Why? Because they hear each other's heart. They know what is really going on inside one another. And so they kind of have new insights, to why different people react to different things different from themselves.
Yeah, correct. To see those things that you perhaps weren't aware of, and even whether yourself or other people weren't aware of also.
That's right.
I think when you mentioned earlier that when you go into a facilitation that perhaps there's an end goal in mind. How do I think like I said, there's a lot of things that changes and happens in between the facilitation that perhaps might alter the end goal. How do you whether stay true to your end goal or do you pivot from the end goal, and how do you go about that?
So generally, when facilitators are brought in, to conduct a session for a team and all that, so a lot of times the HR side, with your learning and development team telling you that, hey, we have some strong personalities in our team. We need to kind of like make them work together and stuff like that, right? So you kind of like plan a roadmap of, getting them to work a little bit better with one another. But throughout the session itself, it unfolds, right? Because, and, a trainer can sit and basically write out a whole script of what I'm going to train on, right? I tell you A, B, C, D, E, all the way up to Z, right? But a facilitator doesn't get that luxury of knowing exactly what you're going to say.
Correct.
Because it depends on feedback and reaction from the participants as well. So the conversations can digress, but it is the facilitator's role to still bring people back. I mean, you still need to address some of those things that arise, from the conversations, but it is a skill as well, a skill to bring people back to where you're meant to lead them to, meaning that ultimate, work together, be nice to each other, respect one another. Those things will still need to come into place. But it would also mean that, I always tell my clients, my sponsors, sponsors are people who basically, whom we liaise with from the company or whatever, who hire us. We tell them, this is our draft or intended roadmap for the day, but things may change, and so as facilitators, we need to be agile. We need to know and kind of sense, what is needed, right? Because it's really no point if the group actually needs a different thing and then you follow as a deadpan, that roadmap that you've done, because that would have been the first time you've met the team anyway, right? Or encountered the team. So it is like I said, it is one of those things which facilitators, once you've started doing it, you realize that at every different workshop, everyone's different. And then you steer people back to where your end goal is going to be. Sometimes it may be a little bit off from your end goal, but you have actually addressed the root issue, which obviously addresses what is outwardly seen.
And you said that, your sponsors or these HR departments are usually the ones that gives you this end goal. Have you ever had the experience, or was there any point in time where you realized that, or you feel the end goal isn't probably what's the best outcome for the team, and have you had to change that, and how do you go about that?
Yep, that has happened many times. So a lot of times I've had people come to me and says, I just need to align people, right? And then, or I just need to put a strategy for the business, that kind of thing and all that. But it is also the preparation work that we as facilitators do prior to the sessions itself, prior to running the sessions, because asking the right questions to the HR person or L&D person is important. So in a way, the facilitation has already started with your L&D team, with the sponsor itself, right? I have had sponsors who, after a couple of chats with them, they go like, oh yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe that should be what we actually need to do. Because they may not have known the root cause either.
Correct.
Yeah, so it is the job of a facilitator to really drill in and dig into, to ask the right questions to the sponsor, to know exactly what the need is. Yeah, so I've actually never, I don't have a set package, so to speak, as to, if you want to do this, then this is the package that, everything is customized.
Yeah, there's no template that one size fits all. Because,
that's right.
Because I think at the end of the day, we are made out of team and companies are made up of human beings, and humans are, well, human. They are different and they've got different needs and wants.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But maybe for those people who, whether they are wanting to start out in facilitation or even want to be a better facilitator, whether they want to be a better leader, what is one step that they can do or one facilitation technique that they can start applying right now?
Learning how to ask the questions without causing people to be defensive is one. But I think the main thing I think I've mentioned it a few times, is really to listen. Yeah. Listen more, talk less.
Yep. So true. And what inspires you to continue to grow as a better facilitator?
I think for when lives are impacted in a positive way and people go away changed, you see the aha moment, the light bulbs in their eyes, just lighting up, right? I think that really gives me a lot of pleasure and a lot of satisfaction. And I feel that being able to help just even one person discover something deeper about themselves that causes them to react in a certain way that maybe they themselves don't realize that it hurts someone else, I think that gives me just pure joy, actually. Yeah.
Wow, that's so good. And yeah, I think as we close, perhaps what's one takeaway that our listeners should remember? If they forgot everything that we shared today, what is one thing that they should walk away with?
Hold your tongue for 10 seconds when you feel like reacting immediately. Because sometimes, words, once it's gone out, you can't go there and like grab it back, right? I mean, it's said and done, like I said, I am guilty of that. I'm really quick to just shoot stuff out of my mouth. But ever since I started being a facilitator or taking up the role of a facilitator, I realized that that's something that I constantly am a little bit more aware of myself. Not to speak before thinking.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for your sharing. I really appreciate you taking the time to just share all this.
As you know, it is an important thing to. It's an important skill to have. Even if it's just your daily life, right? So I just want to encourage our listeners to say that, it's not like, I'm not in the position to facilitate anyone and all that. I mean, be there for your friends, be there for your family, right? And just facilitate their conversations.
Yeah, I think we sometimes forget that, facilitation is not something that we do in the corporate world, but also in our daily lives, whether it's our partners, our family members, that we hold the space for them to just listen to them and just be for them. So yeah, I mean, even though you're not an entrepreneur or not a leader or so, even if you're like a 12-year-old at home, you can still facilitate conversations with your friends and family. And I think that's so important. So yeah, thank you so much, Cynthia, for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Van. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to yet another episode of The Accomplished Podcast. We release episodes bi-weekly on Tuesdays at 6 a.m. And if you haven't already, we encourage you to subscribe, as we're on Spotify as well as YouTube. You can also follow our social media at accomplished.asia on Instagram and TikTok, where we post snippets of this podcast. If you want to find out more about the Accomplished community or how you can be a part of it, drop us a DM on our socials or email us at hello@accomplished.asia. We'll see you at the next one.